They really wanted him before. The question is he
sign.
worth signing?
The question is, did he want to go to Toronto, which a lot of people said he didn't. I mean, he went to a big media market in New York, but in New York, you can blend into the woodwork.
Yeah, Rick Nash.
In Toronto, you're a rock star.
It's true.
Looking like Bosman in Vancouver, huh?
What's that?
Really?
That's what I'm hearing.
Huh. You didn't ask for too much money there?
I don't believe that yet. I'm hesitant to jump on that he asked for too much money thing. But we'll see.
Huh.
That's an easy out, but this is it's like such a crazy day. Oh my gosh! All right, we're live now, by the way. But Kevin, I'm going to find out if he's joining us or not. If not, we're going to jump right on in because there's plenty to discuss. Kevin said he might have a conflict today. If not, he'll be back tomorrow. So
tomorrow's Saturday, right?
Yeah, that's right. He's not. We won't be back tomorrow. He'll be back Monday.
Okay.
He's coming to town, so we can maybe do a live thing, with next week, Mike, with Josh up there, but 3 of us could be here.
That'd be cool.
7 days until the draft. Boom.
I can't wait.
There it is.
You know, it's funny, for being wrong yesterday, I got another 100 followers.
Welcome to the internet.
I should be wrong more often then. I'm 2 followers away from 7,000. People follow me at Mike and Buffalo.
2 followers away. Oh, we'll get you there at the end of the show.
I'm 500 away from 20,000. Not to rub that.
Holy.
Thanks. I feel inadequate now, Josh.
Follow Mike.
You should be ashamed of yourself. 7,000 followers. Puh.
Yeah, pooey. Yeah. X drinking his Mexican Coke.
That's right.
Not snorting the Mexican Coke, drinking the Mexican Coke.
Not Jeff Carter. All right, let's continue.
Friday, June 20th.
That's right.
June.
No Julie this week?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. Here we go.
I could be Julie.
Nah.
Put the wig away, please.
You do a lot of things well, Josh, but you don't make a good Julie.
Yeah,
sorry. I know.
Too bright in here today. I'm going to go with this bright light setup today. See what happens. At any point, by the way, during the show, our air conditioning is broken in our house, which is wonderful.
So if you pass out, I'll just take over.
Yeah, exactly. No, but at any point, the air conditioning guy is going to come during the show. So my wife actually took off from work. She's here too. But the air conditioning is on the other side of this wall. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
You're going to hear knocking and banging. And...
Yeah, because my office is right adjacent to the air conditioning room. So, yeah, this will be fun.
Are they going to turn the power off? So you're...
No, they better not. They can't do that. That's for sure. That's a good point. That's a really good point, Mike. Jeez.
Well,
Actually, it won't matter. It won't matter because let's not think about that. All right. It will matter. We don't want to go there.
Maybe you should let somebody know beforehand. Don't turn the power off.
I said anytime but between 1 and 2 p.m.
And when do they come?
Call me up at 5 of 1. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, jeez. Directly between 1 and 2 p.m. All
okay,
right.
Let's get started.
All right. My fancy shirt on. This is another one of those shirts, Mike, like you say, that looks like really terrible in person, but not so bad on TV. But in person, it looks ridiculous. Anyway. Here we go. Hey, Hockey World. It's Friday. We're 1 week till the draft. It's June 20th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
Oh, come on, Josh. I'm Eklund. This is the Hockeybuzz at hockeybuzz.com, and I am here to defend my friend Josh Rimmer because, we're not going to talk too much about this today because we got so much else to talk about, but things happen, man. All you can do is report what you're being told, and at the end of the day, you guys get what you pay for out there, which is nothing. What? No, that's not what I mean. You get fair value for this, and Josh, that's all. But you're you're fine. And there were plenty of people that backed you that this came down to the very end, right? I mean, this came down to two teams, and it could have gone either way.
Well, like as Luke DeCock said today, earlier this morning, actually tweeting in Carolina, I believe he's the writer for the Observer in Carolina.
It's a great name. You have to admit, it's a great name no matter how you slice it. But go ahead.
I wasn't gonna go there, but anyway, he mentioned, no one's gonna say anything, but it appears that both Pittsburgh and Carolina both offered contracts to Bill Peters, and Bill decided to go with Carolina, which I mean. There's two. I was thinking about this last night. There's pros and cons to choosing which job you want. Pittsburgh, you can win a cup. Carolina, there's no pressure, right? Obviously, if he goes to Pittsburgh, it's a huge pressure situation. They want results right away. You go to Carolina, it's a younger team. They're kind of building things. They're years away from being in contention, and he decided to go the easier route, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the easier route, and it's also, it's his first time as a head coach, so maybe he doesn't want to jump in. In a way, I think Pittsburgh may have dodged a bullet because as good as he is, I don't know that you want to. We talked about this yesterday with Kevin, first-time head coach in that Pittsburgh situation right now. That is a pressure cooker. There are a lot of personalities at work in Pittsburgh, and many dynamics. So I'm not so sure that it wasn't the right move, Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, Ek, in terms of, right now, from an outside observer, Pittsburgh looks pretty dysfunctional. I don't think Ray Shero deserved to be fired as GM. I was not in favor of Bilesma being fired as well. They decided to go in a new direction. They go for Jim Rutherford, a sort of like placeholder GM who's going to be there for 2 or 3 years, and you don't know that amount of time down the road who the next GM is going to be. And it just seems with this whole hodgepodge of people fighting over turf and power and whatever in Pittsburgh that a coach coming in is going to have enough say-so, and also he has to win right away. You've got Malkin, you've got Crosby, you've got all these players. The expectation is win the Stanley Cup or get to the conference final. Otherwise, you've disappointed. And honestly, I think I would rather choose a position where it's a little bit less expectations and you can build up to those expectations later on. So I think Peters made the right decision.
Yeah, and he's coming from a dynamic like Detroit, which is although it's a big there's a lot of pressure in Detroit. It's a team that also is consistent. It's not built the same way, that the Penguins are. It's been built slowly through their own system, to a solid way, and it's not star driven. Even they have Datsuk's a star, no question about it, and Zetterberg's a star, no question about it, and Lidstrom was, but there's still not. There's more similarities probably. Pittsburgh is its own animal. There really is no other team in the NHL like Pittsburgh right now. Chicago maybe is the closest, but it's a different kind of bird, and with all the failed playoff runs of recent history, you gotta have a certain amount of cockiness, I guess I would say, to go into that situation thinking you can do a better job than has been done there. So go ahead, Josh.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean for you to throw them to me right away, but I just wanted to point out, I just got a tweet at Josh Rimmer Hockey. Hey, Josh, you're not Julie. Just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, no, he's not Julie.
That's from Randy Workman.
Oh, yeah, good old Flamester, good old Flamester. Yeah, he's no, definitely, you're not Julie, nor have you ever pretended to be Julie.
No.
Nor should you ever try to be Julie. So yeah.
Please no.
No, I think you're good. I think you're good there. So yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, but there is news today, and just minutes before we went live here, Brad Richards, which was inevitable, was bought out, or according to Pierre LeBrun, is being bought out by the Rangers. This was coming. This had to come. There was no question about this. I guess the question now is what next? And you guys started an interesting conversation before we went live about, would the Maple Leafs be interested in Brad Richards? And Mike, why don't you give your point first here?
Well, first of all, Brad Richards is not going to. It's not going to be a waiver situation. I guess the player can waive the option of being passed through waiver, so it's a direct buyout. So he's been bought out. He
Correct.
can't be claimed by anybody else. Not that I think anybody would have claimed 6 more years of Brad Richards at $6.7 million.
Yeah.
In term, I think there's going to be plenty of interest. I know that we've talked before about, that he's losing a step, that he's 34 years old, that is,
Right.
but he's not a number one center anymore. I think he's a good number two center. So teams like Chicago, teams like St. Louis and Anaheim, who have been in the mix for Spezza and Kessler that we've been hearing about for a number of weeks, if they can't get those guys, or if the price is too prohibitive, they only have to spend money in free agency to sign Richards. My point regarding Toronto, Toronto's got a situation where Boland and them are sort of at an impasse, according to Darren Drager this morning. The two sides haven't talked. The Leafs plan on talking to Boland just before July the 1st to see if a deal can be reached. But everybody thinks that Boland is going to be a 5-year deal or more at close to $5 million. From the Leafs' point of view, would you rather sign Boland for 5 years with the questions that he has regarding injuries, or would you rather sign Brad Richards for, say, 3 years and probably less money? If it's me, I'm thinking Richards, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, and Josh, I know you have some other news, but before you get to other news, I definitely would like I'd like to hear what you have to say about this situation with Brad Richards.
Well, with Richards, first of all, I was happy to hear this news because this was one of the things I did get right earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, where I said I could see the Rangers, hearing that the Rangers are going to probably buy out Brad Richards, and him not speaking to the media on media day was a big sign for me that something was happening there, that he didn't want to address the media because he knew everybody was going to ask him about being bought out, and obviously he was told. Probably that he would be bought out
midway through the season, but yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing that he was bought out. Let's be honest, Glenn Sather doesn't mind throwing money away.
Especially if
Richards. Yeah, exactly. Richards just was not the player. He played a little bit better in the regular season this year than he did last year, but he disappeared again in the playoffs, guys. And that was key for the team. They were expecting guys like Richards and Nash to lead the charge of this team and get them into get them to win the cup. But obviously that wasn't going to happen because those guys didn't show up. It was other guys. It was the key role players that helped them. St. Louis was probably the best player of them all, but Brassard played well, and at times so did Zuccarello. Go down the list. There were a lot of guys that played well, except Richards and Nash. I'm interested to see what happens with Rick Nash now, guys. Do the Rangers try to trade Nash? We know they're not going to buy him out, but maybe they try to move him.
Let me just point out, Richards played badly late in the playoffs. Early in the playoffs, he played pretty well against Philadelphia. He scored the game-winning goal in Game 7 against Pittsburgh. I think as it went along, he's 34 years old. He's seen the wars. He started to slow down. He was playing every power play on the point. He's supposed to be a guy who sets up the point, the power play, and a lot of these teams, what they did was they cut off Ryan McDonough, especially L.A. They cut off Ryan McDonough. They wouldn't allow him to get as many shots off from the point, and they said, Brad Richards, go ahead and shoot. So, I think he was limited by the fact that I think maybe it was just beaten up as it got deeper and deeper into the playoffs, but I still think he's an effective player. If he plays a second-line role, he is not a top-line center anymore.
See, I'm going to disagree with that. And I'm going to say if your options are Bolin at $5 million for 5 years, or Richards, for 1 year at $3 million or $4 million, I would say you're in trouble. You need to do. I don't think either situation is a good one. To be honest, I think that Bolin you can't give a long-term contract to because he's been injured so much. You got to be careful about that, especially that kind of money. Give him 1 year for $6 million if you want to do that, and just save yourself a little bit of a. But for Richards, I don't think he can play anymore, and I honestly, I don't think he would be a horrible. I think he would be one of the biggest disasters the Maple Leafs have ever seen if they were to draft him, if they were to bring him in. Just from watching him, I've watched him a lot in these playoffs. I see him a lot in this division over the last couple years. And, let's compare him to Lecavalier a little bit for a second. I mean, Lecavalier was, picked up by the Flyers this year, had a pretty decent year, still has some speed, still can make plays, was forced onto the wing, which kind of messed him up a little bit, but, and did slow down. But Lecavalier's last 2 seasons, in this one in Philly, the one before in Tampa, versus Richards' last 2 seasons in New York, Lecavalier has been a much more effective player than Richards has for those 2 seasons. And yet Lecavalier is a player who the Flyers would love to move. And at the end of the day, what I think the Leafs are is one of the fastest up-and-coming teams. And speed-wise, the Leafs can just flat-out fly. You put Richards on that team, you slow that down considerably. I mean, Richards is not a second-line. Brad Richards is not a second-line center in this league anymore. He just isn't. And the fact is, the Rangers didn't exactly. I mean, the guys he was behind on the Rangers, wouldn't be second-line centers for the Leafs either. I mean, that's the thing. So at the end of the day, I have a really hard time with this. I think it's a bad idea for the Maple Leafs to go after. I'm not sure that there is a great fit for Brad Richards right now. That's my opinion. Josh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to pass along. It didn't take long for Chris Kreider to reclaim his number 19 that he wore at BC because he has now taken the number 19 with New York Rangers.
Well, wow,
that's pretty interesting.
I'm sorry.
Not cool. That's not cool.
No, the carcass isn't even cold yet, guys.
Right. The corpse isn't even cold. And I mean, you can say that. You can go in and say to the trainers, whatever. Yeah, you hold on to 19 for me. I'm putting dibs in. But for that to get out right now, that was like a statement. That's weird.
Well, one of the intriguing things about this year in free agency is this 5-day period starting on June 25th, where all the free agents, restricted and unrestricted, can talk with other teams.
No, I love it. It's awesome, and you had it last year too.
Yeah, right. It's gonna be great in terms of a lot of news and rumors. But the thing is, with a guy like Boland, it's gonna help Toronto in the sense that if Boland is gonna get an offer from another team where he's going to be offered $5 million or 4 or 5 years, then he's got that in his pocket, and the Leafs will know, that's what he's getting. They'll know that they can move on.
Right.
If he doesn't get that, if interest is thin or interest is limited, then he might be willing to take what the Leafs are offering. So it'll sort of figure itself out. The only problem is if Dave Nonis is proactive and goes out at the draft, which has been talked about, and makes a trade for one of these big centers, then Dave Boland isn't even a factor anymore. They're going to say, well, we've already traded for Ryan Kessler, so see you later, Dave.
Yeah, Boland has he's playing a little bit of a dangerous game here. Not completely, but there is definitely a risk involved in what he's doing. There's teams out there that want him, but he's sort of at the point where after the year he just had, he should become maybe looking for a 1-year deal to see if he can get, establish himself as a player who can play 60 games. He's not necessarily going to be an 82-game player because of the way he plays, but 60 games wouldn't be bad. And I have a tough time with him wanting multiple years. I don't think there's many people out there that are going to do that. I honestly think he's going to be in for a little bit of awakening there. I don't think no one's going to go more than 3 years on him. I mean, to think of 5 years, that's kind of absurd. Josh, what else do you have going on?
Well, I just wanted to point out, let me just pull this back up here, that the Buffalo Sabres have released a statement on behalf of Terry Pegula. In a statement released by Mike Gilbert of the Buffalo Sabres, Terry and Kim Pegula have a deep commitment to Buffalo and Western New York. Their ownership of the Buffalo Sabres and Rochester Americans and the construction of Harbor Center are evident in that fact. Like everyone else in the community, they have a strong desire to have the Buffalo Bills remain a centerpiece of the region. So apparently, Pegula is going hard after the Buffalo Bills now, so he could own the Sabres and the Bills, which is could be the first owner to own, I believe, an NFL franchise and an NHL franchise.
Yeah, I don't think that we have one guy who owns an NBA team and an NHL team. But
obviously
you're in town there. This has been going on for a while, right?
Yeah, and we had an NHL owner who owned a premier soccer team in England, Hicks
Right.
from
Yeah.
Dallas. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of bidders, including Larry Tannenbaum from Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, along with John Bon Jovi, which I find is pretty laughable because a couple of the Buffalo rock radio stations banned Bon Jovi music because Bon Jovi would end up taking the Bills out of Buffalo and moving them to
You know,
Toronto.
he just
I
must
know.
love a bad name. I mean, that's my thing about Bon
Oh,
Jovi. I
nice
mean,
play on words there.
But this all goes hand in hand with what Terry Pagula and what he's doing in terms of redeveloping the Buffalo waterfront. He's built the Harbor Center down near the First Niagara Center, a nice hotel, they're really trying to revitalize that area. And the talk is that if he does buy the Bills, which would probably cost him over $1 billion, they would be part and parcel with the building downtown football stadium near that area. There's a casino down there. They're really trying to build up Buffalo, and that would be a major part of it. Pagula has sold off a lot of his gas and oil holdings in Pennsylvania, and he's worth billions. And he seems really enthused about getting Buffalo on the right track, positive track. And I think it could happen, but there are a number of bidders for the Bills, and it's going to be a lengthy process. But I think he's going to do it.
yeah. I mean, and it's good. It entrenches him in the community. Of course, if Tannenbaum gets a hold of him, the rumors will begin immediately. That's Toronto. Which I thought, and eventually, hey, with global warming having just finished the Cosmos series on PBS, Buffalo could be beachfront property soon. So, it's be a good place to be.
Look at a fan.
Yeah,
must be nice to have a lot of money.
Must not be bad. Can't be that bad.
It makes you wonder: could he sell the Sabres? Like, is he going to hold on to the Sabres if he gets the Bills?
He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to.
Having talked to him, he's a Sabres fan. He's a hockey guy first and foremost. He's looking forward to he wants the Sabres. I mean, the Bills are obviously he has an admiration for the Bills, and it's a good business move. But I think the Sabres are still going to be his passion.
The NFL has some provisions about owners owning other franchises in other sports, but there's an exception for owners owning teams in the same city. Like the were rumored to be interested in buying the Bills, but Jeremy Jacobs owns the Bruins, so they would have had to transfer the ownership to one of the sons and have Jeremy Jacobs buy the Bills, and that would have been a nightmare. So no, but Pagula, since it would be in the same town, would be a problem, and he's got plenty of money, so I think he is right now the odds-on favorite, but things could happen.
The NFL is a lot different than of course the NBA or anything else. The NFL is its own
entity,
organization with its own army essentially. So yeah, that's the NFL is you don't want to mess with the NFL. They're in their own world, their own category.
Let's do NFL Buzzcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, NFL Buzz. Come on. No, I'm gonna leave that to others who do that a lot better than me.
They can do that on Court TV.
They do that on every radio, every sports channel, every sports radio station in America. It's NFL Buzz. I mean, America is just NFL all the time. Here in Philadelphia, the Eagles. It's right now we're talking about voluntary camps. More than we're talking about anything else. More than we're talking about the draft that's in Philadelphia a week from now. So yeah, this is not football owns this country. I'm happy not to be a part of that at this point. So Ryan O'Reilly. Some more talk about Ryan O'Reilly over the last 24 hours. It's basically, the Avalanche coming out and saying all the right things, saying, we really want O'Reilly to stay here, but we're not gonna blow our team budget up and all that stuff. O'Reilly being noticeably quiet, I think, during this whole process, which is a smart thing to do for him. But more and more talk that I hear about the Toronto getting involved in this. Now this makes sense. Now this is a different. Obviously, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say Ryan O'Reilly is a better fit than Bolin or Richards, but here's a quick player, with a lot of speed, good two-way player, and the right age for the window of opportunity that the Leafs have. So Ryan O'Reilly, to me, I could see this happening. I really could. I don't think this is going to work out in Colorado. I just get that impression from talking to people. As much as the words are being put out there right now, This is, it's one thing to have the baggage from 2 years ago that happened. It's another thing to have it sort of happening again. There was all this talk about that was a different ownership. This is Sakic and what, but at the end of the day, the common denominator here is it's the same Ryan O'Reilly.
Right.
And I think that that's something that is concerning. It just should be disconcerting for Avalanche fans who want to keep Ryan O'Reilly around. Not saying it's impossible that they turn around and figure out something and sign him soon, but bad blood, Josh. Bad blood to me.
Yeah, I remember there was a little bit of bad blood the last time we went around with this, and obviously Calgary signed him to an offer sheet, and Colorado matched it. But I have no idea what's going to happen here. Obviously he either stays or he goes. The question is, what kind of return would Colorado get on him if they did trade him, if they traded his rights? Could they get something that maybe that can help them? Obviously, they're very nice down the middle. Maybe they can get themselves a nice scoring winger to play with Duchesne and McKinnon. But
well, to me, it's defense. They have to look at defense. They have to, and to me, that's where it all starts and ends, right? So.
And do they? Obviously, they go young. They go young again as well.
They go young. Although, what if you were to package Phaneuf and Franzen in a deal for O'Reilly? Because that then you get it. That is a situation that you look where Colorado was last year, and look where they're going, and you say, okay, if they have two more solid NHL defensemen,
right.
They're a Western Conference finalist. That's so. Yeah, they have plenty up front, and I think that that's the thing with them. They have plenty up front.
Here's a crazy one to throw at you, and I don't think they've talked, but maybe a good fit could be Bobby Ryan in a deal for Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan, obviously, who's going to be a UFA at the end of this coming season. Maybe that could be an even deal.
And that's the reason why it doesn't add up, because they would probably lose Ryan after 1 year, because they would have to spend the kind of money they have to spend on O'Reilly to keep Bobby Ryan. First of all, Adrian Dater, who's been on this the last few days, I've been reading his columns, and he basically agrees with what your assessment is. He says, Ryan O'Reilly, in a way, has been treated like a second-class citizen in Colorado. They definitely have the core guys that they're interested in building around, and it always seems to be more difficult for him to get what he believes he deserves. So, and I really, and maybe I'm misreading the situation. Maybe I'm overstating.
I don't think you are, but at the same time, not to interrupt you, I don't think. He's the one who went out and got the offer sheet. So it's hard.
He went out and got the offer sheet because they weren't giving him the money he thought that he, based on how he was playing. I think Ryan O'Reilly
thought he earned. Not how he was playing. Like, Ryan O'Reilly did get paid properly in that deal because but before that, there was no saying that he was going to be. You could project that he could possibly be that kind of player, but he was also a really big risk.
Yeah, but yes, he was, but he has performed. Above expectations throughout his entire career in Colorado. They've paid Duchesne the $6 million. They're paying Landeskog big money. McKinnon's on his entry-level deal. They need defense, and I believe what is working here is they want to spend money. They want to go out and get themselves defensemen because they need to improve the blue line. And they deemed, I don't know if they've deemed O'Reilly the most expendable, but I think they know that they can get a good return for him. Now, if we're going to connect Toronto, I don't think it could be Phaneuf, but I don't know whether Colorado would want to spend the $7 million on Phaneuf. I think if that was the deal with a few things added in, people in Toronto would be ecstatic. I have a feeling it would be more along the lines of Jake Gardner. Now Gardner's not as established, but he's mobile, he's young, he'll be relatively cheap on his bridge deal. That would make a little more sense if they were looking to save a little money there and spend maybe money on a free agent defenseman or go out and make another deal. But I think that it adds up where O'Reilly is 23. You've got Kessel, Van Riemsdyk, Bozak, all in their mid-20s. In terms of his age, in terms of where the Leafs are going to go, it really adds up that they go for somebody like O'Reilly or somebody like Mike Richards, who's in his late 20s, rather than a 35-year-old Joe Thornton or a 34-year-old Brad Richards.
Precisely. And now, in other news today, we talked about this guy yesterday as being sort of the forgotten about guy, and today he's all over the place. Nikita Nikitin, one of my favorite names in all of hockey, the Oilers have been granted permission to talk to him by the Columbus Blue Jackets. So you can go out to dinner with my girlfriend. I'm not necessarily going to let you go any further than that. So we'll see. But I mean, this is they're talking to Nikita Nikitin, who must want a ton of money for Colorado to be letting them do this. This has to be a situation in my mind where for Columbus to be letting him do this. I mean, you might know more than this on this, Josh, but to me, like if Nikita Nikitin, who I think that we talked about yesterday, the Columbus Blue Jackets really would like to, you would think would want to hold on to, is being granted permission to talk to another team. The Oilers. This seems like the Blue Jackets' way of saying, listen, you're not gonna get anywhere near what you're asking for. Go try with somebody else and see what happens.
Well, I mean, look at who's in front of him. I mean, you got Wisniewski, Jack Johnson, Fedor Tootin, Ryan Murray, and they got other guys as well that are escaping me right now that are even ahead of Nikitin on the depth chart. So obviously he wants a little bit more than what the Jackets think he's worth, and they're giving him a chance to talk to somebody else.
Yeah, and this is not a bad. This is a good move for the Oilers to make, and it's an interesting because it's not a. We talked about yesterday, permission being granted without, actually trading for his rights, which is an interesting thing. That there was a little confusion about that earlier, that they had traded for his rights, and they haven't. They just got permission to talk to him. I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often, and this is the kind of thing that I do believe happens more often than we find out. I honestly think that this happens, on occasion, and we just don't ever know about it, because this has to be leaked out somehow. Because really all it is we're talking to him. And I think that teams often would say, well, go ahead and talk to him. You can talk to him. That's fine if they don't think they can get him back.
And I think this is more a product not of the Blue Jackets' depth on defense, but a product of the thinness of the free agent pool of defensemen right now. Because if you look, we've talked about Niskanen and Strowman. They're both 27 years old. That's one of the reasons that they're two of the bigger names being sought after in free agency. Nikitin is 28. He's a solid defensive defenseman. Now the thing is, a guy like that, in a normal year, might be had in free agency for $3.5 million. Because there are so few defensemen out there, Nikita Nikitin could make over $4 million, and that's where I'm saying these teams, that's why there's a market for guys who are already signed, like Dion Phaneuf, like Christian Ehrhoff, if Buffalo decides to try to trade him, because they're already locked up and their price point is set.
Well, Ehrhoff is definitely more movable. Go ahead, Josh.
Just some news here, guys. This is almost becoming laughable now. Kevin Weeks has just tweeted, waiting to confirm, but told multi-year deal with Desjardins, and the Canucks are very close. So does that mean Pittsburgh is going to lose out again if they were going to hire Desjardins now?
Well, they can always hire Bylsma back. No,
because I believe it was Dreger that said earlier that he was the front runner.
Here comes Ron Wilson.
I did hear that Bylsma in Vancouver was very possible today. And here we have Desjardins. Who knows? I mean,
if that report from Kevin Weeks is true, what does that say about the situation in Pittsburgh? If Desjardins won the Calder Cup, he's a hot commodity right now in terms of coaches without NHL experience. But what does that say about Pittsburgh right now? If a guy who's looking for his first NHL job turns down the chance to coach Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin to coach a team that's going downhill with the Sedins at 34 years old,
and he'd be the second coach, and apparently. Rumors out there that he would be the second coach if that happens. To turn down the Penguins and go to the other team, right?
Yep.
I'll tell you. To me, this points to there's one solution for Pittsburgh, and I racked my brain about this yesterday to try to think who it could be. And is it Ulf Samuelsson? Maybe Ulf Samuelsson's a good pick. Kevin Law thought Ulf Samuelsson was a good pick in Pittsburgh. I think Kevin Dineen is the pick for Pittsburgh. I think Kevin Dineen is the guy. Obviously, long-standing relationship with Rutherford. This is like completely to me. And I think Kevin Dineen is a great coach, not just a good coach, but a great coach. I think that what we saw, in Florida was just a really bad scenario for him. But I talked to people who were around Kevin Dineen in the AHL and just said this guy is the real deal, full out real deal. And Kevin Dineen is a former NHL captain, a former NHL guy, who could lead people, and I could see him very much being the kind of guy who could get Pittsburgh in line, get the players in line in Pittsburgh. Kind of like a hard-ass coach, but still a former player, so they'll look up at him like he's a player. And there is something to that. I mean, I hate to, you always hate to say that but I've talked to Hitchcock about it, and he's told me himself. He's like, yeah, I mean, there's something to the fact that I'm not a player that with certain players in the NHL that does matter. He's the first to admit it. You can sit there and say Scotty Bowman never played the game, but at the end of the day, it still doesn't matter. There are some coaches that just don't get the respect because they didn't play the game. Josh?
Kevin Weeks, again, hearing from sources involved that AHL Calder champ coach Willie Desjardins has chosen the Canucks job with a multi-year deal. And I will say this yesterday. I was told by 3 people that the final 2 in Pittsburgh were Desjardins.
Yeah.
And now I'm forgetting his name. And Peters. I had bad nightmares last night. But anyway, Peters and Desjardins, I was told, were the final 2 from someone that was involved in the process.
But Josh, what they really meant was it was Andrew Peters and Eric Desjardins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But wouldn't that be something, their final, if that is in fact true, and then that was their final 2, and both guys go to different teams? I think that's telling you something about your franchise, is it not?
It is, especially because Rutherford's involved, and people really respect Rutherford. He's not part of it. I mean, people really, that's another reason I think that's why I think Kevin Dineen or Ulf Samuelsson, you're talking about 2 former people who've played with Rutherford, who know what he's all about, and both of whom, one of them played in Pittsburgh, right? Ulf Samuelsson played in Pittsburgh, so there's that too. But I would, if I was Kevin Dineen's agent, man, I would be on the phone right now making a case for it because he makes so much sense there, just way too much sense in my mind.
I know we joked about it a few weeks back, but if Paul Maurice hadn't taken the Winnipeg job, I think this job would have been his a week ago.
Yeah,
especially with the connection to Rutherford being hired twice in Carolina, and the sort of mentality and the intelligence and demeanor that Paul Maurice has. I thought he would have been perfect for Pittsburgh, but
also fired twice.
Maybe Doug McLean gets another interview.
Yeah, bring on Pierre Maguire. Anybody. I mean, I don't see any. I mean, Pittsburgh's got to be, if those were indeed their two they were looking at, they kind of blew it with Barry Trotz. I mean, there's so many. Pittsburgh has handled this offseason very haphazardly, in my mind. So it's obvious right now that unless there is something that we're just missing, somebody that they knew all along was their guy, which is of course is what we'll eventually be told. But we'll find out. But right now, the Penguins fans are definitely concerned. I've gotten a couple texts already today about it.
And maybe now the coach of Scranton Wilkes-Barre, who supposedly that was in the mix, if it doesn't go to Samuelsson, if it doesn't go to Dineen, if they don't revisit the Ron Wilson, Mark Crawford, the veteran coach angle, which it seems like that they've shrugged that off because they, that if this report is right, it was the 2 AHL coaches, or Peters was an assistant coach with Detroit, but he was also an AHL coach with Rockford. I mean, it didn't seem to be an important thing for them to have an NHL pedigree. maybe they go back and revisit that, because right now they're without a coach.
I was surprised to hear the report yesterday that the Canucks talked to Mark Crawford again. Did you guys see that?
Yeah,
I think it was TSN that put that out there, that he spoke with Vancouver. I was shocked because of the whole what happened with Bertuzzi thing. Obviously, it's different people that are there now, but still, it's kind of
it's such
intriguing.
a hard thing to pin on Crawford. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I think the Penguins are up 3 rivers without a paddle. How about that? There you go.
Before we get off the coaching page, interesting tidbit from Bob McKenzie this morning. The Maple Leafs were searching for their coaching staff, and apparently had put in an inquiry with Andy Murray, former head coach of the LA Kings and St. Louis Blues. He's head coach at Western Michigan University, but he has decided to stay at Western Michigan. I would have to think that the tenuous position of Randy Carlyle right now in Toronto would be one of the factors. Carlyle does well next year. He probably, is safe. If he has a difficult first half, he's probably a casualty, and that would be a lot to give up for an assistant coach. So it's going to be an interesting an interesting thing to find out who Carlisle gets as assistant coaches. We've heard Tockett's name mentioned. We've heard Adam Oates' name mentioned. I've heard Dineen has been mentioned as well. I don't know if he's in the mix, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible at this point. This has been a crazy couple weeks with coaches and GMs, and the draft is a week away. So do you think they want to get these things? There's definitely going to be pressure to get all this done today. I would think with as far as Pittsburgh and Vancouver, I would not be surprised if we had coaches for both teams by the end of the day, because there's a week to go here, and going into this, no one's going to want to go into Monday without a coach, I don't think. But that's we'll see what happens. So let's get on to the teams we decided we were going to discuss today are Ottawa and Minnesota. Actually, the wheel decided for us back here. And that kind of just steers me right away to my rumor du jour right now, which was a good one. I was surprised. I was talking to a source early this morning. I was working on my main update, and suddenly this person said, "Yeah, I was watching your podcast and where you had mentioned, and I think you stumbled onto something." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, there definitely is something going on with Chicago and Ottawa, and there has been discussions about Patrick Sharp for Jason Spezza, but there's a very complicated deal, and there's situations where you have to, if Spezza resigns, they end up giving up more. There's a conditional picks involved in this for sure, but it does appear like that is and we talked about this yesterday with Kevin. If you're going to trade for Patrick Sharp, you better get a top center back, or at least a top 2 center. Mm-hmm. You got to play behind Jonathan Toews. Jason Spezza might be perfect behind Jonathan Toews. In fact, I think he would be, and I think that would be a great fit for him. He would be not have to be the guy because Toews is there, and he could probably be a hell of a second option for them. So this is Ottawa's biggest off-season concern right now is Jason Spezza. Thoughts on Ottawa, Mike? And then Julius?
I think they have to take care of the Spezza situation first. I think the Bobby Ryan situation is also going to be a little bit of a problem for them, because and they may wait on that because he's a UFA at the end of next year. That might be something that they take care of at the deadline, or want to take care of now if after July 1st if they can't get him locked up. Spezza, he's a perfect fit at 31 years old as a number 2 center, either in St. Louis, Anaheim. Chicago makes a lot of sense. I think the whole thing with Patrick Sharp is making close to $6 million. Not to say Patrick Sharp is an excellent player. He's 32 years old. He plays a certain type of game. At a certain point when you get into that age range, 33, 34, you're going to start dropping down a little bit. Yeah. Spezza is a guy who's a skill player, and he's had his share of injuries, but not being the center of attention and having Jonathan Toews take a lot of pressure off of you, I think he could really thrive in Chicago, and especially if he's paired with somebody like Patrick Kane or Brandon Saad on a second line.
Saad seems like a perfect fit for him in many ways. Josh, your thoughts on? Well, let me give you a little more about Ottawa for a second. They've got 19 players signed. Key UFAs. they've got a couple of. I mean, with beyond Spezza, they've got Alice Hemsky, Milan Mikhailuk, who we've talked about a lot. Matt Cashin, not such a big deal there, but they do have 19 players signed, and they have almost $21 million in cap space. So Brian Murray has done a pretty good job as far as that goes. I mean, that's a lot of space. They could be a player for a big time UFA. They've got the money to do that. It doesn't seem like they're going to sign Hemsky, and it doesn't seem like they're going to sign Mikhailuk, as from talking to people as well. So that, and if they move Spezza, that's $7 million more dollars they've got to spend if they move Spezza. So, I mean, and if they, Bobby Ryan, I agree with you, Mike, on I think if trade deadline, if anything, they might try to extend him. He might be enjoying himself there. Erik Karlsson obviously is their focal point of this team and one of the best defensemen in the world and should be the focal point of the team. And Craig Anderson is on his last year of his deal, and Robin, the backup later is a UFA. So he's somebody that they have to think about too, because I think he's sort of their future, or at least has been touted as their future. Josh, what are your thoughts on this team?
With the Senators, I think you got to move Spezza. I mean, I think this is everything that's been talked about. The Senators in the offseason is where's Spezza going? When are they going to trade Spezza? What are they going to get for him? What teams is he willing to go to? I'm actually tired of hearing about it and talking about it. I think they just need to move him. And it's been out there that it's been close, and I think you've said that as well. That a deal might have been close, but I think they need to move them and move them soon, because I only think that the price is going to keep going down and the offers are going to start getting worse than what they probably are already. Obviously, when a team knows that a player wants out from another organization, they're going to lowball you, and I think it's the worst thing that ever got out.
It's a bad scenario because and even Brian Murray's saying I'm not going to get fair value. He's admitting that already, which is I mean, kind of. I hats off to him for being honest, but a little bit strange to hear a GM say. But that's the truth. I mean, you're probably not gonna get an equal player back unless you do something like a Patrick Marleau, for Jason Spezza, where you find someone else's problem essentially and make that move. That's the way you get back equal value for Spezza.
Well, saying that takes the pressure off of Murray. If he says, I'm not going to get equal value, then whatever deal he makes, he can say, well, I didn't get equal value, and this was the best I could do. So, I mean, I think it's sort of like
it's a little bit of
yeah, exactly.
Now, he also said, well, we still have him signed for a year, and we'll wait, and they could move him at the trade deadline. They could move him for a heck of a lot at the trade deadline. I mean, he and Bobby Ryan, they could end up with a couple first-round draft picks. And remember, next year's draft.
Right.
Spectacular. So,
no, one of the concerns with Ottawa going forward, and I know that they've done a pretty good job rebuilding the organization. Tim Murray, before he left to be Buffalo GM, was integral to building up and drafting a lot of good young players, and they have a nice core of youth. But one problem that they may have, and it's the problem that Winnipeg has, and Edmonton has, and Calgary has, are these Canadian markets that players don't want to play for. And that's the Toronto, Montreal are different reasons. Some players don't want the attention. Some players just don't want to go to a Canadian market, and they don't want the pressure, or they don't want the attention.
Yeah,
and that's got to be a consideration, and that has to be a concern for Brian Murray, because Bobby Ryan was the exception to the rule. He I don't know if he had any trade restrictions, but he did go to Ottawa. He had a decent year last year until he got hurt. But we'll find out whether he wants to stay there long term, and if he doesn't, then they're going to probably get lowballed by some team at the deadline.
I mean, their top offensive player, if you take away Bobby Ryan and Jason Spezza, is Kyle Turris.
Yeah.
So this is a team that doesn't have a whole lot of depth up front right now. If when you're getting rid of Hemsky or getting rid of Mikhailuk, they're gonna make some moves. I mean, this is another place where I could see Jussi Jokinen fitting in really well. And this is the kind of team that I think Jokinen's going to get paid a lot of money. And I think this is the kind of team that might do that, might pay him a lot of money.
And Jussi Jokinen is not. I mean, I know what he did in Pittsburgh. I know he's got a lot of talent. I know he's great in shootouts. You risk a lot paying Jussi Jokinen a ton of money. I think he's a glorified top 9 player. I don't think he's a top 6 forward in this league.
Yeah, but there's I agree with you, but at the same time, we've seen what happens. When you have playoff players in LA, there's a lot of players that are glorified top 9 players in LA too that suddenly are major factors in the playoffs. And shootout guys cannot be underestimated because that they arguably can get you more points than actually at the end of the day getting a point out of a shootout player is a pretty big deal. That's with the NHL with how close everybody is at the end of the day. Yeah, if New Jersey had UC Jokinen on their team last year, they would have made the playoffs. It's that simple, right? So let's go on to the Wild, the Minnesota Wild. Slightly different situation here. The Wild coming off probably, well, no question, their most exciting season, and really, showing, what they can do. This was a team that had finally found their way, into the second round, and I think when you look at the Wild, their big win over Colorado, granted, arguably, controversial win because of the way they won it. A lot of people were saying with the Cook hit that did change the series, but they still won the series. But then also took, taking Chicago to the brink. That was an amazing thing for them. And the Wild are, they actually have quite a few UFAs. This is a team that has a lot of cap space. They've got 17 guys signed, and they've got $22.7 million in cap space. So that's a lot of money. But UFA-wise, looking at Danny Heatley, who won't be back, Matt Molson, who won't be back, Mike Rupp, maybe Cody McCormick, possibly Jake Dow, Clayton Stoner, Nate Prosser, Ilya Bryzgalov won't be back. So these are the UFAs. RFAs, they've got Blum, and they've got Darcy Kemper and Nino Niederreiter, who's an interesting one. Jason Zucker, another interesting one. This is and Justin Fontaine. This is a team that doesn't have a whole lot of players signed, to be honest. Their key guys. They're still built upon Parise, and they're built upon Mikko Koivu, Jason Pominville. Those three are the core of the offense. But we saw some exciting play from them. Defensively, Suter, Spurgeon, Ballard, Scandella. These guys, they've got a pretty good core back there. But a lot of really good young players, a lot of good up-and-coming players, a lot of entry-level contract guys.
A lot of good defensemen.
A lot of good defensemen.
Young D-men.
Yeah, young D. They've drafted very well. They've been very patient with this team. There's some guys on this team that I really like.
Rodin and Dumba.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No question about that. This is a team that there's going to be high expectations on. They've got money. They've shown that they can spend money before. Of course, the big knock is the big speculation for the last year has been they're going to go out and get Thomas Vanek. I don't think that's going to happen.
I'll bet you a cookie.
Yeah.
You bet me a cookie.
I'll bet you my 2 cookies.
That's right. I got a 3-cookie bet on this.
4 cookies.
That's I'll take that bet because a guy I really love on this team is Eric Holla. He's absolutely. And
I'll throw in a wig to boot.
A wig, yeah, we can use the wig. You can always use a wig around here. Eric Holla is one of these guys. He has a little bit of Patrick Kane in him to me, and he's just got tons of speed, and he's exciting. He's a game breaker. He's the kind of player that could help put Minnesota on the map because this is a team that has consistently been ranked as the team that people who aren't in Minnesota don't care about more than any other team. This is one team that if you're in Minnesota, you care about them, but they consistently rank as the 30th most popular team in the NHL, right there with Columbus often, on teams that are not followed by people outside their city. All right, but I think this year's Wild team may have, and this year's Columbus team, with both those teams, I think they went a long way to fix that.
They came in the league at the same time too, didn't they?
What was that?
Columbus and Minnesota.
How did they come in the same time? They may have. I think you're right.
I think they did.
And they both, in my opinion, are 2 exciting teams that should have whatever fans in these playoffs. Columbus's run was very similar to Minnesota in a lot of ways, very exciting, and both came very close to moving on in the playoffs against teams that they weren't supposed to beat. So Yeah, let's talk to you first, Mike, about Minnesota.
Well, I think that the area of most concern, I've talked about this a couple times, is their goaltending. I mean, you've
Yeah.
got Harding with his health problem. You've got Nicholas Backstrom, has been chronically injured. Backstrom has 2 more years left in his contract. Harding has another year left in his contract. Kemper is an RFA, but I would assume that they're going to re-sign him to a bridge deal. It's
Yeah.
a question of whether this team goes out with a healthy amount of goaltenders on the market, and do they go out and they sign a veteran like Ryan Miller, or do they go Marty Brodeur? I mean, which direction do they go? I do think that they're going to add a goaltender. It's a question of how much they want to spend and which goaltender. Because I don't think after all this time you can really depend on Backstrom and Harding, in spite of the fact that Harding had a great year last year until he had his health problems. He was one of the best goaltenders in the league, but you can't depend on him anymore to stay healthy. Defensively, I think you're right. Dumba and Brodin are two of the finest young defensemen in the league. I mean, Dumba hasn't really proved himself at the NHL level yet, but he's expected to be an effective player. And Ryan Suter plays 30 minutes a game. I think that they are going to sign Vanek, and I think you can rename the Minnesota Wild Buffalo West, because another player who's on the radar, I know that you mentioned it on the rumor chart, was Derek Roy.
Yeah.
And if you have a number one center, Mikko Koivu, and then you bring in Derek Roy as your number two, playing alongside guys like Pominville, and if they do sign Vanek, who he played with in Buffalo, I think you got an effective number two line there. And you bring in a couple veteran players to supplement and help out the young players who are coming along. If they do that, then they, probably are up there with St. Louis and close to Chicago in terms of contending in that division.
Another player I haven't mentioned yet with this team is Jordan Tutu. I've heard about mentioned as well. We talked about him a couple days ago, and he's another fit. What is really interesting, Josh, about this team is these guys. Charlie Coyle making $900,000 this year. Mikael Granlund making $900,000 this year. Eric Holland $900,000. Brodin $900,000 basically, and Dumba basically $900,000. You're talking about when you can get 5 players of that caliber on their entry-level contracts at the same time, that really sets you up for a championship type run. I mean, you can then really put money into other places, and get some one year guys. I mean, they have a really intriguing team, and I think you're going to see and free agents. I remember last year this time people were talking a lot of free agents I was talking to were actually talking about the Islanders as an option because they had just gone through the Penguins thing. Their free agents are going to want to go there, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I just it's I don't have an answer for you. I
think it's an amazing thing. I mean, I'm really into this whole concept of if you want to put together a team to win, you need at least 3 guys who are factors in their entry level contracts. Yeah. That gives you this.
But why mess with the youth? Like, why mess with it? I mean, you got all those great young kids.
No.
Like, why bring a guy in that's going to kind of upset the apple cart, right?
Yeah, but right, exactly. You don't have to bring in guys to take their place, but it is rare that you hear that a team has even 1 or 2. If you think of your top 6 forwards and your top 2 defensive pairs, it's rare to get 1 or 2 of those guys on entry level contracts. They've got 5.
But I mean, I know, and Coyle and Granlund, they're gonna break the bank when they become free agents, because both of those guys are really good hockey players as well. So Coyle, Granlund, Brodin, and Dumba, those 4 guys, you're going to want to build your team around those 4 guys. You're not going to have room for Parise and Suter in the next couple of years, right? I mean,
they're going to have to watch who they sign, because they're going to have to go out there and they're going to have to sign, 1-year deals, because they're going to have to keep their cap space open next year to bring those guys in.
Or what they do is, since they have so many of those entry-level deals, and there may be teams out there who have star players who they're ready to trade, who have a couple years left in their contract, that they trade 1 or 2 of those guys to get an impact player right now. Like, for example, and I'm not saying this is a rumor, I'm just saying put 2 and 2 together. A guy like Eric Stahl, who has 2 years left in his contract, Carolina is probably going the rebuild route. You trade an entry-level deal type player like Dumba or Coyle in a deal to get a guy like Eric Stahl, then you have Stahl and Parise and Koivu and Suter. You have enough core players that you can really take a run at the Chicago's or the St. Louis's.
Yeah, I mean this is a team that is they've always reminded me.
They need a goalie.
They need a goalie, and that's exactly it. And they remind me very much of the LA Kings right before the Kings won the Stanley Cup, because the Kings were in the same spot, right? They had the good situation, but without Jonathan Quick, the Kings don't go anywhere, right? So this is the situation here is they have to get their Jonathan Quick. Josh Harding is a hell of a goalie. His injuries have been, and his disease and everything, they're not connected. That's the one thing at this point. It's easy to sit back and say that Josh Harding's a risk because of his disease, and he is, but he's at the same time, the injuries that he's had haven't been because of that. I mean, if Josh Harding was healthy last year, at the end of the year, right? I mean, I think this team beats Chicago. I mean, if they have Josh Harding in that series.
And what about Darcy Kemper? I know he's young, and he's another guy that...
I'm a Darcy Kemper fan. I like Darcy Kemper. I mean, last year there was a lot of pressure to put on the kid, and he performed well, but then got the concussion, and even then showed like an incredible battle, right, to try to stay with it. I guess having Brizgalov on your bench will make you do that, but he stuck with it and really did the best he could, and God, I mean, the fact that this team was where they were with Ilya Brizgalov last year in goal is really something. I mean, if they could get a Ryan Miller to go there, man, that could really set them up. They could become immediately a force in the Western Conference. That's what they need to do. Even a Jonas Hiller would be a great fit here. So and that's a possibility. I've definitely heard that name mentioned, and Brodeur too. But I think that this is a team that you want to, you really want, with all these young guys, you have a big window, and you want to have a goalie that has a big window with you. Miller's Brodeur doesn't have a big window. I thought Brodeur was a good fit for last year, and I still think they're probably kicking themselves for not making that trade, because he would have been better in the playoffs, probably than Brizgalov.
Yeah.
But they need a goalie with a window. They're gonna go get it, and they're gonna be competing with Vancouver for Jonas Hiller, in my opinion. That's what I think. But yeah, so that's a good. Let's spin the wheel and see what we're gonna talk about tomorrow. All right, here we go. Ready? Sorry. Let me try that again. Sorry, not a lot of space here in my office for the wheel. The wheel's taking up too much space. Round and round it goes. Tomorrow we will talk about Montreal and St. Louis. All right. Two of my favorite topics. Let's talk about Montreal tomorrow.
Especially the head coach.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait. I have definite opinions. Definite opinions there. Josh, go ahead. What do you have?
Yeah, well, some more news on Paul Stastny. Pierre LeBrun posted a column. As soon as Wednesday, other teams are allowed to, per to the CBA, to reach out to Stastny's agent, Matt Keetor. Paul had been open about the fact he wants to stay in Denver. Keetor said Friday, "We will keep talking with Joe throughout the process," that's Joe Sakic, "and give them every chance to retain Paul. We will meet next week and see where things go. The plan is for Keetor and Sakic to speak in Las Vegas during the NHL Awards." Sakic saying, "I'm going to touch base and see Matt next week, but I also understand Paul has the right to listen to other teams. We hope we can keep Paul, but he's in that situation where it's his choice. I don't blame him if they choose to see what's out there."
Well, there you go. I mean, Matt Cater's good. He's a really good agent, and I do think that he's in good hands there.
Cater, not Keetor.
Matt, I call him Matt Cater, I think. But yeah, he's a really good agent, and had
Chara's agent.
Chara's agent, represents a couple guys besides that too. So he's really top notch. Another news today, obviously, also too, is the announcement of the Chicago Blackhawks and Washington Capitals Winter Classic in Washington D.C. Mike, that excites you, huh?
Biggest kept secret that play the Caps.
Yeah. I mean, we knew it was going to be Washington. I know it came down to Philly and Chicago. I guess they decided that the Flyers had too many Winter Classics at this point.
So Chicago is this will be Chicago's third. It would have been Philadelphia's third. So
that's true. So that's probably not the reason. But go ahead, Josh.
Well, I wonder if the NHL wanted Chicago in there for they're still doing 24/7, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So they want to, hey, it's time to get Kane and Taves on 24/7 and promote the league even more. I mean, how many people love these two guys and they want to see them on TV and what it's like, to be around them when the cameras are actually still on, but you know what I mean, behind the scenes. Everyone wants to see it.
Josh, maybe that wouldn't be such a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, let's see how nice Kane's place is. But I'm interested to see.
Let's check out Kane's place. I bet it's pretty good.
Hopefully it's not like Kessel where he has a roommate in another room, a smaller room, Tyler Bozak.
Yeah, there you go. That's how I think, that's a good, it'll be what's going to be interesting to see about this for me is that is how much access Chicago gives, because they're a tough team with this kind of stuff. They aren't, of all the teams in the NHL, they're one of the stingier about things like that, and they're one of the harder organizations to deal with. So from a media perspective, so let's see what they give. Washington's very very media friendly, so it's the opposite situation there. But
wonder if we'll see Quenneville pull his junk.
Well, we can only hope so.
No. Okay, let's hope they follow. Let's hope they follow the model of last year's winner or last year's 24/7, and we get to see. I believe it's Maria Kirilenko, whoever, Alex Ovechkin's fiance. As much as we saw Alicia Cuthbert Phaneuf, because I'd rather see her than Alex Ovechkin.
Let's see.
Hey, we saw his mom in the last time, right? Didn't we?
Show title: Quenneville's junk. Okay. Where's that? All right.
Joel's junk. There you go.
Well, with that, we're off today. Enjoy the weekend, guys. There's going to be a lot going on. I have a feeling probably tons of stuff will happen right after we get off the podcast, because I think that this afternoon, usually this is the Friday, the good old Friday, which is always the fun news day, where if you're going to bury something, you bury it on Friday.
Take out the trash.
So this is, if you're going to do something unpopular, you're going to do it now. So anything unpopular could happen soon. Jason Spezza trade might be one of those things, because as much as people in Ottawa, some Senators fans say they want to see Jason Spezza traded, remember how many people own Jason Spezza jerseys and everything like that. It's still an unpopular move. The people who want trades are the ones who talk. People who don't want trades are usually quiet, but there's usually more of them. More people want to see Spezza stay, which is still a popular player. So anyway, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you soon. See you Monday.